Good afternoon, everyone. I've been studying longsword for basically my whole life, but I've actually studied under Peter Gabler, who has his lineage, and he's studied this is in Germany. Peter Gabler is a German national, and he studied under Otto, who studied under Jürgen, who studied under these were all the factual Meister in the night from Bamberg. It's close to Bamberg. It was Herscheid near Bamberg. It was a factual there, and I studied there under them. And so I got some problems with what I've seen on interpretations. One of the things that just kind of pops out immediately is how. How isn't a word. Howen is a word. And it does kind of mean cut. It means to hew something off. Like if you had a big block of something and you went chowen, you hewed off a chunk of it. So that does kind of mean cut, but cut is a different word, and it literally means to cut something. So howen is different than cut. It means to hew something off. And that's another thing with Germany, is that in every little town there's a dialect. There's dialect for every town. And Grammatik is verschiedene, and the grammar is different also. Where you go different places, they use a little bit of different grammar and stuff. I mean, essentially, Hochdeutsch grammar is Germany. I'm not a professional at this, but it's different. Every little town you go to, they'll say, "Es ist ein bisschen Stadt, ein bisschen Stadt, ein bisschen Stadt." There's so many different ways of saying a little town that you can't. So that's another problem when we come to the interpretation of this, is that it was done at individual Fachschule, and they would have their dialect for diese Stadt. Now would have their own dialect. And so they would use words. Another one is Alber. I've never heard Alber used. I've never heard anybody call anybody Alber, so du bist Alber, you are a fool. No. But we would actually hear something I use this word all the time with my friends. And you'd say, Alda, was geht ab, Alda? And was machst du, Alda? You can say it differently. Alda can be dude. Be yo, dude, what's up? Was geht ab, Alda? And that's when you're saying it to your friend. And it's like saying, what's up, dude? But if your friend just did something really stupid, you'd be like, was geht, Alter? That's like saying, what did you just do, idiot? Stupid or fool. So, Alter it's a very much, it's like dude. It's like the word dude. It's not spelled Alber. It's almost pronounced more like Alter. Like the elder. Like if you're calling somebody an elder. And in fact, you can even say it that way. And so that's when I hear Alber, I don't really quite get it. I think that there's something wrong there with the interpretation. I think somebody said fool, when really they could have said dude. And then it's not Alber, it's Alda. Was geht ab, Alda? I hear that all the time in Bavaria. That's how we would talk to our friends. And so then there's other ones with the master cuts. So one time, and then another time he says, the vier Meisterschneiden, the 4 master cuts, but there's actually 5. And then Zorn is also referred to as the Volksschneiden, is the peasant cut. So it's referred to as a peasant cut more than a master cut. Yet Zornhau is labeled in a master cut. And it's referred to, if you look at, it's actually referred to more oftenly as the peasant's cut, or like the wrath, you know. I like Zorn. Zorn's got power to it, and it's got a lot of, it's a good baiting move. It's good for baiting a person and doing something. So is Albur. So is that one. That one's good at baiting people in to do something. And so there's a lot of these little things that I've noticed with the interpretations of, and this is a very common thing that happens with interpretation of old language, is that especially when you're dealing with dialects don't do well through time, right? You know, you got your individual dialect that you're using in this town, and each fecula would probably form their own dialects, right? Every fecula, probably, you know, it'd be like, oh, they refer to these things this way, so you'd have to like tweak your like words a little bit, you know, and that's just a common thing. Like if you go to Forchheim, you're gonna say "Mach ich ein bisschen Eis." I want ein bisschen. But if you just drive like 20 minutes north to Bamberg, they say a bisschen. Some people, if they're closer to Herscheid, you say a bisschen, but closer to Bamberg Centrum, you're going to say a bisschen. So there's a lot of different words. Another thing is indes. Like indes, what does indes mean? It's kind of like one of those words you can put in indes, right? You can put it anywhere and kind of do almost anything with it. So that's another, like, one of my problems with the interpretations, is that the word indes is not fully understood, I don't think. Like, there's a lot of little things to do with the interpretations. I think that it's good to do interpretation. I think that we can learn stuff, but I think that the most that's going to be learned for actual combat readiness is to participate in combat, you know, at least like Blossfechten. And another thing is that these manuals were written for Blossfechten. Blossfechten does not mean Krieg. Krieg is different than Blossfechten. Blossfechten means just fencing. And so it's going to be geared in a way that is not what you would use for actual war. Krieg is different. You're going to be in a line. There's a lot of differences versus individual duel or Blossfechten. So that's another thing with the interpretation, is that this was written to like make it a little bit less dangerous for students, you know, so that you don't get harmed as easily. There's a lot of things that we would do in a Krieg style of war that you wouldn't do for Blossfechten. In Krieg, like, your number one thing is you don't want to get hit. Like, it doesn't matter so much if you hit, it matters if you get hit. You got to stay in line. You want to fill that hole. And so the number one thing is defense and not getting hit. You know, you can overwhelm your opponent and push them back and make them run away, and that's winning the war. Blossfechten, you have to score points. So it's a little bit more, it's a little bit different than Krieg, which leads to a little bit further misinterpretations. We have to, it's difficult to separate the idea of just fencing and actual war, especially since most people have never experienced any actual melee combat in war. Like, that's like something that doesn't happen anymore. So it's left to Hollywood to kind of show us that. But there's a lot of things with the interpretations. I think my number one thing is to not stick to interpretations so strong that you're losing Blossfechten, that you're losing in actual fencing. You know, it's better to do what works than to sit there and try to, like, understand what they're saying and keep failing. So Always do what works. And look at your documentation, look at your interpretations, try to learn from that. But if it's not working, don't use it. Oh yeah, and another thing. There's throughout the document, you'll notice that there's that they talk about that as a reference that they have to the erste lesson, the very first lesson that they took. That tells you something. That's like a code. That's telling you that we're not telling you everything in the books, that there's primary things, say, as I said before in the first lesson, always focus on the primary. Indes, right? Then we see the indes come in. Indes, was magst du, blossfechten, blah, 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 right? And so we have to differentiate between that. There is definitely secrets. I think one of the main secrets is in the master cuts. I think the squinting cut is actually a reference to being like, you like squint down and something like, oh, hey, I'm gonna hit there, and then you go there. I kind of feel that way. I'd have to dig through the document, and I'd have to show you in the actual German the actual German text where he's talking about how in the first lesson, remember the keys to the first lesson when doing this. Always follow the deception. It says always follow your deception. And then it goes into describing the actual moves. So I think that, and if you think about it, if you were writing a book for fighting, would you give your secrets? Or would you kind of give them little pieces? So they're like, hey, there's a piece missing here. Hey, Joachim Meyer, there's a piece missing here. And be like, oh yeah, there's a piece there. That's because it's the first lesson. And I'm not writing the first lesson down. I'm only going to give the first lesson. And there's a big secret in the first lesson. And I'll tell you a little bit of that secret. Tritt and Schloss. Tritt and Schloss. Kick and duck. He doesn't talk about Tritt and Schloss throughout the whole thing. Yet if you study war, if you get into war, you're Tritt and Schloss. You're going to be ducking like crazy, and you're going to be kicking like nuts as soon as you get close. You want to kick and stomp. And you don't hear anything about that. It doesn't say anything about kicking. Doesn't say anything about ducking. And if you look at the drawings, they're all very erect and very, kind of like, if you look at it from like a Krieg, like if you had all your opponents standing straight up, they're going down, man. You're because you don't attack straight. How you come up is your man to your left has your defense, and you attack that way. So if your people are standing up, it just, if your opposing line is standing straight up and going straight forward, they're going to have a bunch of holes all around, right? So there's a lot of different things that I know. I'm a combat veteran. There's a lot of things that I know from actual combat war that applied to what I've learned from these manuals and like these little secrets that I see. I'm like, there's secrets that they're not telling you in those manuals. And so that's my problem with the interpretation of this. Y'all are doing a great job, but I think that you need to speak German. You need to live in Germany and speak German to even try to do any kind of interpretation. Otherwise, you're just referring to other people that have interpreted it. So, good war, good fencing, man. See you on the field.